Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So this is Survey, Part 2, Station, Chapter 5, Marcia. "Hey, Marcia!" called a voice behind me. I flinched at the sound of it, but stopped walking and turned around. "What is it, Jim?" I asked, hoping that it didn't sound too snappish. "I need to talk to you about your RPS," he said, "in a professional capacity." My whole body tensed. "You need to do something about him, granddaughter," Papa Legba said. "He's evil." I sighed. "I know, Papa." I turned around, and the large white man came closer. "What about Jack?" I said out loud. "It's about his treatment," he said, lips curling in a slight grin. That meant we had to talk in private. Fine. I was heading to my office anyway. I turned and continued in that direction. After a moment, he caught up to me and walked by my side. "Are you having problems with your new bodyguard?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Oh, it just seems like you're upset right now." "It's been a busy morning, Jim, and I just had a client try to suicide on me not too long ago, so yeah, I'm a bit frazzled." He held up his hands in mock surrender. "No need to be cranky with me, Marcia. I'm here to help you, remember?" "About as helpful as a grave robber," Papa said in my head. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing and didn't reply. For once, Jim kept his mouth shut until we got to my office. Putting my desk between me and him, I motioned for him to take the seat on the other side of my desk and palmed the door closed from the plate. Instead of a chair, he sat on the couch. I sighed again and asked, "So, what about Jack?" "Ah, right." He sat back on the couch and crossed his legs at the knee. "The day before the situation with Marta, Jack decided that he didn't want to talk to me anymore. He told me he was sick of talking about his previous pre-call mission, and that if I wanted to find out about it, I should look up his file. I'm worried he might be off his meds, since Mick has told me that he's been doing extra night shifts at comms." I frowned. "I see. I haven't seen a drop in his performance with me, but he has been looking tired. I'll have a talk with him." I stood up. "Thank you for letting me know. I have a session soon, so if you don't mind." I waved him to the door. The man grinned. "You have another hour and a half before your next session, Marcia. You've been avoiding our meetings." I folded my arms. "I am not comfortable talking to you." "You have no one else to talk to other than me, not professionally." I shook my head. "I could talk to Betty," I said. "You know that's not an option," he replied, with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I wouldn't want to have to report you to the captain or Unity Medical." "Really?" I said. "You could try, but then I'll report you for sexual harassment." His face became stony for a moment, then he smiled again. "You won't do that." "No?" "No," he said, as he stood up and came to stand in front of me. He was far too close, and because of the desk, I couldn't step back. "Because I know things about you that you probably don't want to be made public, like what happened on Diana." I widened my eyes. His face was too close to mine. "How do you know about that op? It's classified." "I have friends in high places. You have quite the interesting file, my dear." I slid my body along the side of my desk and managed to move back to my desk chair. "I think you should leave." "And here I was going to ask you to dinner," he said in a patronizing voice. "No, I know that's not what you want. Leave." "I could fix your little problem for you. I promise I'll be gentle." I slammed my hand on the palm plate on my desk. When the door opened, there were a couple of ensigns walking by, and I thanked all the gods there were for their presence. Thank you for the update, Dr. Adelson, I said loudly, getting the ensign's attention. Jim looked out the door, then back at me with the same slimy grin on his face, but finally left my office. I palmed the door closed again and locked it. Fucking hell, I said out loud. How did he get my records? I put my head in my hands and tried to breathe normally for a while. The smell of his cologne was still lingering in the room, making me sick. I opened my desk drawer and rummaged around it, finding my small spray bottle of Florida water and sprayed it on the couch. It helped. A bit. At least now it smelled more of sweet oranges than the crap he wore. You should talk to someone about this, granddaughter, Papa said as I put the bottle back in the drawer. And who's going to believe me? No one's ever around to witness anything, and when we're around other people, he's perfectly nice and acceptable. Jack will believe you, he replied. Jack barely knows me. The room faded around me, and suddenly I saw myself in a chapel with wooden pews and candles lit. Next to me on the pew was Jack, looking toward the altar. He took my hand and squeezed it, then let go and said, I love you, Marcia. The vision faded, and I came back to the room. What the hell? What are you showing me, Papa? He's more important than you know, granddaughter. Stay close to him, he said, then left my mind. I sighed. I got up and lit the candle on the small altar I had on my desk. I went to the food dispenser, got a cup of coffee, and put it next to the candle. All right, Papa, I said out loud, then sat back down to get ready for my next client. At dinner, I was tired and irritable, so I sat in one of the corner booths by myself, out of the way of most of the other people in the room. I was reading a book on my tablet, not really paying attention to it, when I heard a group of ensigns talking near my table. Oh, come on, you've got it easy. All you have to do is push pixels all day, said one of the male ensigns to the blonde woman in front of him. Not that easy when the captain's on your shift, Mark, the woman replied. Mark laughed. True that. The woman sighed. It does get boring sometimes, but like they tell you in the academy, every job is important when on pre-call, right? Mark sniffed. Yeah, right, Jenny. Come on. You can't tell me that those grunts they sent with the scientists don't have it easy. They get to go dirt side on new worlds and hang around until the scientists need something done. This planet has a lot of water, from what I hear. I wonder if they get to surf. Oh, please, said Jenny. Oh, please, said Jenny. They haven't even got boots yet. They're stuck in the scaper, you idiot. Mark continued. Oh, right. Well, I wonder if they'll take the scaper on cruises later. I bet you they'll be having a blast down there in the fresh air while we get to pass on the mail and wait for them to get sick or something. Jenny was about to say something when I saw Jack stand up, go over to the table and say in a calm but dangerous tone, If you think it's so fun, Ensign, why aren't you on the planet right now? The table went quiet. Mark's eyes widened. Jenny said, Sorry, sir, Mark's just being a dumbass. He held up a hand to quiet her. I pocketed my tablet and stood up, making my way to the table. Do you know, Mark, what it's like to walk into a scientist's campsite because the comms have gone quiet and you find them all dead? No? How about living on a scaper for nearly 6 months because you're the only people left alive? Do you understand that the stuff you call boring is their only way to get home alive? Do you? Jack was breathing heavy, still looking dangerous. The whole mess hall had gone quiet. I carefully came up next to him. Jack? He swung around. What? When Jack saw that it was me, he went wide-eyed. I could feel one of my mother spirits come out, and I touched his arm. He immediately wilted. He looked at his feet and turned bright red. Come with me, Jack, I said. Let's go to my office. Yes, ma'am, he mumbled quietly as I steered him out of the mess. As we left, the buzz of conversation started again, but quieter. I could still feel the eyes of the ensigns on Jack. Marcia, he started to say. I shook my head and stayed silent all the way to my office, but I didn't take my hand off him until the door closed. Sit, I said. He obeyed. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a packet of my herb tea. I closed the drawer, then keyed open another panel that opened the water station. Taking a mug from the small shelf next to the taps, I dumped the packet into the mug, then filled it with hot water. I placed the mug in front of Jack and said, "Give it a few minutes." He grimaced. At that, the mother came back in full force. "You will drink that when it's ready, Lieutenant." He winced. "Yes, ma'am." "So, how long has it been since you've had a full night's sleep?" I nodded. "Mm-hmm. And when did you stop taking your meds?" He opened his mouth and shut it. Hanging his head, he said, "To be honest, I don't remember." "I know you're not talking to Dr. Adelson anymore, and you haven't been to see Carr to check on your meds. Obviously, you've been lying to both of them and me about how you're doing, or you wouldn't have blown up in the mess hall like that." He shrunk into the chair. I think if he could have run from me, he would have, but something seemed to keep him rooted in place. He stared at his hands, fidgeting with them. "How did you know that I wasn't talking to him?" "He's a psychiatrist and I'm a psychologist. We also happen to be the only licensed ones on the station. The rest of the mental health team are nurses with limited counseling experience. It's a requirement that the therapist has a therapist so that they don't lose themselves in their patients. While it's usually better to have one outside of your own practice, we make do being on station." "Oh." "Now, when you came on station, you agreed to a therapy plan. If you don't want to talk to Dr. Adelson, then you can talk to me. It's a little awkward chain of command-wise, but I'd rather not lose you." His head snapped up at that, and I could tell he was thinking about what happened with Marta. He sighed in resignation. "All right, fine." "Fine what?" I asked. "Drink your tea." He took the mug in his hands and took a sip. "Fine, I'll talk to you. But I'm still sick of talking about the failed pre-call mission." I gave him a sympathetic smile. "I get that. And I'm glad you're willing to try me out for a while. Sometimes therapists aren't compatible with a patient for talk therapy, and that's actually okay. You still have to see Carr every other week for your meds. You'll start taking them again, right? I won't have to badger you or have you take them in front of me?" The mother came through and stared at him with a look that said she'd brook no nonsense. He blinked, looking surprised. "Huh. Could he see her?" "Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am." "Good, and don't forget the tea at night. I promise it'll help you sleep. Do you think you'll be okay to stay on comms duty? I have half a mind to take you off it." "No!" he blurted. I raised an eyebrow. He coughed. I think I'll be fine." I stared at him for a moment. He stared back, looking a little confused, but I could tell he wasn't lying to me. "All right, but no more taking over shifts for folks. Do your shift days and nothing more. You're on half-time for a reason. If you're that bored, take a run or start a hobby." "Yes, ma'am." I sighed. "Believe me, Jack, you're not the first PTSD patient I've had. You were right, what you told Mark in the mess hall. I think he knows the dangers of the job, but like his friend said, he was being a dumbass. He's young, much younger than you, and it's his first deployment after the academy, so my first therapy homework assignment for you is to go and apologize to him." He winced again, but nodded. "Good. Now finish your tea, then go to your quarters and sleep. You're taking the rest of the day off. I can order you to go, or you can go because it's a good idea." He raised his hands in surrender. "I'll go, I promise." Jack picked up the mug and drank more of the tea. "Marcia?" he asked. "Yes, Jack." He hesitated a moment, then said, Why does it seem like there's two of you sometimes? Like just now, when you asked me about my meds, there seemed to be more than just you asking me." "Interesting. Well, that's a surprise," I said, mostly to myself. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up a hand. When you're ready to talk about God or whatever you believe, I'll tell you. Or rather, when you're ready to look more outside yourself and have faith in something. He looked resigned, fidgeting with the mug in his hands. You finished? Yeah, thanks. I took the mug back to the wall and put it in the recycler. I have a client now, Jack. He stood up and started to walk out, but stopped before opening the door. Thank you, Marcia. I mean it, he said as he left. Who are you, Jack Kirby? I thought, watching him leave. And why are you in my visions? Chapter 6. Jack. I woke up the morning after I yelled at the ensigns from a dreamless sleep. I checked my wrist comm and saw that there was a message from Marcia. To Lieutenant Jack Kirby from Reverend Marcia Brooks. Take today off too. It's a light day and I don't need you here. I already let the XO know. Go do your homework. MB. That woman is kinda spooky sometimes. Well, I suppose I have to get some food. I showered, dressed, and made my way to the mess hall. I was feeling so good after the sleep that I nearly forgot that the ensigns I yelled at could possibly be in the mess hall. Oh, crap. What if that Mark guy is there? Shit. I could feel my cheeks grow hot. Okay, you can do this, Jack. You were the asshole and you need to own up to it. Right. I took a deep breath and walked in. The mess wasn't too crowded, but Mark was indeed there with the same group as yesterday. It was morning, so that could explain why they weren't laughing, but it seemed to me that they were having a serious discussion. Do it, Jack. Go on, I told myself. I went over to the table. All conversation stopped as they stared at me. Mark looked like he was trying to decide whether or not to bolt. I took another deep breath. Ensign Mark, look, I'm sorry for yelling at you yesterday. At all of you, really. I wasn't feeling well and, well, yeah. They just kept staring at me. Well, I did it. I didn't expect them to forgive me or anything. I started to turn away. Lieutenant Kirby? Said Mark. I turned back around. The kid swallowed and said, listen, I was being a jackass too. I mean, I didn't know about your last assignment. I'm really sorry. We looked at each other and I gave him a bit of a smile. Jenny gave you a bit of a lecture, huh? Mark rubbed his head like the kid he was. When did they get so young? Yeah, but you were right too. Scary, but right. He stuck out his hand and I shook it. I looked over at Jenny and she gave me a grin over crossed arms. Make sure you keep this one as a friend, Mark. Friends are pretty important out here. Yeah, I will. Thanks, sir. Mark blushed. I nodded, then turned and went to get some food. I wasn't sure if I was feeling good about it or not, but it was done. I asked for a container to go. The near-empty mess hall still felt way too crowded. Life settled into routine again after that. I dutifully took my meds and started therapy with Marcia twice a week. There were no more red priority messages coming in from the pre-call team, but I always thoroughly scoured the messages and data that came in on my watch. And even dug into the messages that weren't from my shift. I was getting a reputation for being a really fast comms officer, which the captain and Foster were pleased with. I should have you give a course to the ensigns, said Foster one night. On what, sir? On how to get shit done, Kirby. You seem to blow through the mail and handle comms like nobody's business, and are somehow able not to make mistakes. I rubbed my head and said, I suppose I... Oh, don't be so modest. You're good at this. I really wish I could have you on full-time watch. I wouldn't mind, but then what would the ensigns do? I joked. Foster laughed. True, true. How do you do it, though? I like to keep things organized, I guess. I mean, I even got to inbox 0 on my own email. It drives me nuts if I have anything outstanding. I guess that anal retentiveness carries over? I shrugged. Well, it works, so I won't knock it. I'll stop bugging you now. Carry on. Yes, sir. I turned back to my station. I appreciated the compliment, but the mail didn't really require a human to go through it. Having human eyes on it did make sure that priority comms didn't get missed, especially since mail incoming from the planet was always about 2 weeks behind. Comms people also had to look for patterns. Is there someone outside of the chain of command sending large volumes of data off station? Is there a sudden spike of letters to pre-call family members? When did the email get sent? Anomalies all went to the captain to decide what to do next. I was trained not to open any of the data packets unless I thought there was a reason to. Outgoing mail was just sent, and anything that needed to go to Unity colonies or stations was stored for the next picket ship. The picket ships were pretty handy. Most were just computers with a jump drive attached, which made them some of the only ships that could jump in system in an emergency. The ones that could haul in animate cargo could even get specialized supplies to a colony in need. Besides, I thought the little ones were kind of cute in their robot way. In the early days, some of the Earth shipyards even painted theirs to look like bumblebees or rabbits. You could always tell how old one was from a paint job. Luckily, this shift ended up being normal. No priorities, nothing unusual. Until my console blinked. Picket ship, sir. Looks like it's got physical cargo, I said. Give it permission to dock, Kirby. Yes, sir. I transmitted the docking code, and the station and ship computers did the rest. Ensign Cho monitored its progress at her console. Docking complete. Picket dropping cargo, she said. Excellent. I hope my new rosin and strings are finally here, Foster said, and rubbed his hands in glee. You play the violin, sir? Yep. Broke a string last station concert, though, so I haven't been playing much lately. Getting stuff on station takes forever, but at least Fleet plays for the shipping. Foster grinned. Cho and I laughed. My console beeped, and I turned back to authorize the digital mail transfer. I routed all the pre-call team's mail to send in the next data transmission, while the station mail routed automatically to its recipients. Data transfer complete, sir. Thanks, Jack. Cho? Cargo still to be shifted to the 0G lift, sir. Peter reports several large packages, so it'll take about 5 minutes. I looked over at Cho. Peter? As in Peter Rabbit. It's one of the old Rabbit cargo pickets that has our station on its route. It's even got the blue coat and everything. She giggled a little. You should show it to Jack, Commander. I think it's one of the coolest ones. Oh, sure. Switching to the docking cam. Sure enough, the outside of the medium-sized picket ship in the docking cam sights was painted to look like a brown rabbit with a blue waistcoat. Its legs were the jump engines, and its tail was a round white antenna cover. On one side of the ship, Peter Rabbit was written in a loopy script. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I told you, said Cho, and she started to laugh again. Foster laughed, too. You gotta hand it to the old lunar shipyards. Their artists were pretty awesome. Peter is our main physical drone. There's an unpainted one that just brings digital mail. Occasionally we'll get Dopey, one of the 7 dwarfs, but that's a large cargo hauler. We probably won't see that again for another 1.5 years, when the pre-call is done. Seriously? I asked. Dopey? Yep. Cho's console beeped again. Transfer complete. Airlocks closed and picket detached. Docking bays routing the cargo to the core. Foster nodded. Great. Let the supply corps folks know that they've got some stuff coming up the tube. On it, sir, I replied and sent the message. Well, said Foster, we're going to have some happy folks at breakfast. That we will, sir, said Cho. Peter's clear, and poof, there he goes. Acknowledged, Foster said with a laugh. I'm still amazed at how fast those suckers are. Me too, sir, said Cho. Mail may take a while, but at least with those, it's not too bad. I agreed with both of them. Picket days always boosted morale, even if only by contagion. My wristcom buzzed. Looking at the display, I sighed, but smiled. Another missive from my mother. I saved it for later and returned to monitoring my console. And your cousin Gail just had twin girls, and she did it the old-fashioned way. Can you imagine? Why go through all that pain when there's perfectly good uterine pods available? The older woman on the screen shrugged. Oh, well, your dad say hello. Your papa went up to Luna today to go to a conference on something or other about new ship programming. So I get your daddy Dan all to myself. Dan finally put in for retirement yesterday. I mean, 70 is the new middle age, but I think he's all done training new recruits for pre-call. After what you went through, his heart didn't seem to be in it anymore. Nobody could chatter like my mother. Speaking of that, honey, I hope you're doing better. I really wish you could have stayed on Earth. She gave an exaggerated pout. That way I could be sure that you're getting regular hugs and home cooking, but, well, you always did prefer being among the stars than planet-bound. I love you, sweetheart. Send us more mail, okay? Okay, I worry. She waved goodbye and the screen went blank. I sighed and smiled a bit. I didn't really care too much about the family gossip, but it was good to hear her voice. Dad's old enough to retire now? I always forget just how much time passes when I'm out here. So many changes, though, even for the relatives that never leave Earth. Really, out of all of them, Daddy Dan was the only one who understood why I left. I didn't understand why he didn't go back out either, although I suppose when he met Mom and Papa Jack that he didn't want to go anywhere else. I think he wishes that I hadn't followed him into the service, but he was still proud of the day I got my commission. Papa Jack said he was proud too, although I think he was disappointed that I didn't turn out to be an engineer like him. I shrugged to myself. I looked through the rest of my mail, all digital. Short email from Dad saying hello, some digital books and vids, and a vid from Derek Ellis. I haven't heard from him since we've been back to Earth. I wonder why he's messaging me. I queued up the video. Hey, Jack. I was hoping to see you again before you left for station, but I couldn't make it back to Earth in time. If I'm guessing right, you're probably there by now. Hope it's a decent posting. The man paused. I could see the sorrow on his face. I braced myself. I suppose I should just say this, and I hate to give you bad news while you're on station, but Hans is dead. He went out to the woods on his property on Geneva Colony a month ago, and he shook his head. I'm hoping you see this first before hearing it from the brass. I figured you'd want to hear it from a friend. He paused again. I was stationed at Unity Hub, but when I heard about Hans, I decided to finally get some help here. There were tears in the man's eyes. I'm not going to go out like that, Jack. Derek lowered his head and scrubbed his face with his hands. Holy shit, I thought. Well, that's it. I should have followed your lead and gotten help earlier. I hope you're doing okay, man. If you ever come to Unity Hub, let's have a beer, okay? Later. The screen went blank. Fucking hell, Hans. The world around me went gray, and my body felt numb. Luckily, my bunk was the only real seating in the room. I suddenly found myself on my side, staring at the dull gray bulkhead across from my bed. Fuck me. Oh shit, Jack thought. We're not gonna make it. Ellis, get your ass in here, move, said Jack from the scaper. But there might be someone still trying to get here, Ellis said from the door. I doubt it, said Hans. We're overrun. Move it! We can't lose our only pilot. Ellis jumped into the scaper and I slammed the door shut as the bugs started climbing against it. Hans looked at the very few people that were left and shouted, Ellis, get us the fuck out of here! Ellis, breathing hard, got up from the floor and made for the cockpit. Hans followed him. What do we do now? Asked Julia, the CMO. Jack looked over at Janet, who was sitting on the floor, staring at nothing, then looked back at the CMO. Right, why don't you treat the wounded and have the others pick their bunks and all that? Sure, she said. She paused for a moment, moved closer to Jack, then said quietly, Listen, Janet's going to be in shock for a while. I can give her some sedative to help her sleep, but I think you just landed in command. Fuck me, Jack muttered to himself. Louder, he said, Yeah, you're probably right. Go check on the others. I'll get Janet to the captain's bunk, Julia said. He walked to the middle of the scaper and ordered the few remaining people. All right, folks. Find a bunk and strap in so we can get the fuck out of here. Much to his surprise, everyone obeyed without question. Jack moved to the cockpit and strapped himself into one of the seats there. Hans, can you get a signal to station? Been trying, Jack, but I think the comms are buggered. Maybe literally. Either someone didn't have good aim on the tunnel side or one of the bugs got to it. Fuck. Jack pressed his wrist comm. David, are the engines up? Yeah, go, go, go! You heard the man, Derek. Get us the fuck out of here. There was a roaring sound through the ship, and then the G-force of liftoff. Only then did Jack start to think. Chapter 7. Marcia. I pushed the door comm. Jack? There was no answer. Shit. Jack, open up. It's Marcia. I waited another minute, then pushed the comm button again. Jack, if you don't open this up, I'll get the CMO down here. Still no answer. I waited another couple of minutes, but I knew that he wasn't going to open the door. I tapped my wrist comm. Brooks to Carr. Carr. Hey, Marcia, what's up? I have a possible mental health emergency at quarters. Bunk 227. Can you come down? Jack's not responding to comms. On my way. The doctor opened the door. Jack's room was dark. I could barely see the lump that was Jack on the bunk. We walked in. Lights, low, I said. There came a groan from the bed. Go away, said Jack's muffled voice. No, Jack, I'm not going to go away. Whatever. I went over to the bed and touched his shoulder. Jack, the doctor's going to examine you. Can you roll over? He rolled over on his back and stared up at the ceiling. The doctor took out his instruments, checking Jack's eyes and even taking a blood sample. The analyzer beeped and he beckoned me out the door. He's basically fine, Marcia, just a bit dehydrated, which is probably because he hasn't eaten in a while, he said quietly. Shock, it looks like. Possibly depression? Do you have any idea what's going on? Possibly. I got a message from his therapist on Earth in last night's mail drop. He said that one of the people from Jack's failed pre-call team had committed suicide at their home on Geneva Colony. He suggested I keep an eye on Jack because of it, but didn't say why. Carr nodded. Maybe he was close to this person. He must have been, considering his reaction. I looked back through the open door. Thanks for coming down, Oliver. I think I can handle it from here. Great. This is more your lane than mine. See that he has something to eat and some liquids, even if it's just a nutrition shake. Call me if you need anything, he said, patted my arm, and then left the bunk area. I went back into the room and closed the door. I pulled down the desk bench and sat. Jack rolled over to face the wall. I got a message about Hans from your therapist on Earth, Jack. I take it you two were close? He made an affirmative noise. Oh, I see. Jack didn't elaborate any further, just stared into space. I sat quietly, just being present. I pulled out my tablet, set it in silent mode, and checked my messages. I reread the one from Jack's therapist and replied to a few others. Then I canceled the rest of my appointments for the day. Jack's breathing slowed, so I assumed he had fallen asleep again, but after a few more minutes, he rolled back over to face me. Why are you still here? He asked. You're grieving and you need someone here. I'm a chaplain, it's what I do. You have other people to take care of. Well, you're not wrong, but I've canceled my appointments for today. Jim can handle any emergencies that come up. You're the only critical patient right now anyway. Oh, he said. He rolled again onto his back. Marcia, why are you so bright? How do you mean? Dr. Carr, my room, it's all gray, but you're full of color and loud. Oh, I see, I said. Is there any ESP in your family? He turned his head to look at me, confused. Not that I know of. Anyone in your family religious? Maybe in the neo-pagan traditions? Well, sure, a few here and there. I have a cousin who is Buddhist, I think. Well, what do you believe about God? God? Or gods? Or something? Or nothing? What does this have to do with anything? I went over to the drink dispenser and ordered a coffee for myself and hot water for tea. I'm trying to determine your beliefs because not everyone believes in spirits the way I do. Certain belief systems aren't open to the idea of many gods and spirits who interact with humans. So, how you answer will let me know what I need to explain and how I can best explain it. The dispenser beeped and I took my coffee out. I emptied one of the packets of tea into the second mug and placed it in the dispenser. When it was done, I put both mugs on the desk. Oh. He stared at the ceiling of his bunk for a minute or so. I just waited patiently. What do I believe? I think there's something out there that made the universe. I don't know if it's a god or spirit or whatever with a name, but you've seen too much out here to discount anything, right? You're spooky, Vicar. I chuckled. You do a pretty good Dr. Carr impression. He laughed quietly, and I gave a mental sigh of relief. Hopefully this meant that this really was just shock, and he could get through it with a little more time. Thanks, he said out loud. Where to start, I thought. From the beginning, said Papa Legba. I gave a sigh. Right. Nearly all of the Unity chaplains are ordained as a minister or priest in some sort of order. A few of them are agnostic, like you, but have a calling to help people spiritually. There's even a few atheist humanist types, although they're pretty rare. We all get a seminary degree at one of the Unity chaplain schools. Before I went to the military, though, I was in a religious order on Ujima Colony. It was an open, multi-faith tradition and trained me in ESP techniques and what some call magical practices. Through that magical practice, I started to form relationships with certain deities. I work with them, and they work through me. It's kind of like having a relationship with people who live on the other side of a door you can't see through, but you know they're there. So what you saw in my office the other day was one of my deities coming through, wanting to make sure you took care of yourself. I paused. I find it interesting that you're able to see them through me at all. Most people either don't see it or at all or ignore it if they do. In your office wasn't the first time. I saw it when we went running, too. Really? He nodded. I raised my eyebrows and sat back down. His being here is no accident, is it? I asked Papa. I didn't get an answer, though I could sense the toothy grin and chuckle. Jack returned to staring at the ceiling, but his expression said he was thinking about something in his head. Or maybe having a conversation, I thought. I sat and waited again until he looked over at the second mug and asked, Hey, is that tea? Yes, it is. Do you want it now? Yeah, I think I do. I still feel heavy, though. You'll need to sit up for it. He did so. Listen, I said, you're in shock right now, but I promise you it will get better eventually. Drink the tea and let the world reorient itself, okay? Yeah, okay. When I handed him the mug, Jack's eyes looked as if they were seeing something far away. He took it automatically, but didn't drink it. I stayed in front of him in case I needed to grab the mug quickly. Jack, where are you? He handed me a mug, too, with some sort of tea or something. In the scaper, after Janet... He stared at the mug. Why? Why did he have to kill himself? He should have known better. Jack's hands tightened around the mug, his knuckles turning white. He looked straight at me, although I didn't think he was really seeing me. Why didn't he call me, huh? Why didn't he fucking call me? I quickly moved to the side as the mug slammed against the opposite wall, the tea spraying all over his bunk, the wall, and the floor. His eyes were wide and angry. Marcia, I called him when I was on Earth. I told him where I was going. He sent a message back and he seemed okay. He said he was fine. I mean, we didn't stay together, but I still loved him. I know he still loved me. Why didn't he tell me? I could have helped him. I didn't say anything. I knew this was just his anger and grief talking. I came over to the bunk and sat next to him, taking his hand. I just breathed, hoping that my calm would get him through his anger. There's not many of us left, Marcia. There were only 15 of us to begin with. And then the commander killed herself in the scaper. A few of the folks just disappeared when we left station, and now... He took his hand from mine and put his head in his hands. It all fell apart in the hab, Marcia. I should have kept us all together, but I couldn't keep them from being angry at each other and me. Why couldn't I keep us together? Made sure we all got help. He raised his head and looked at me, tears flowing down his face. I should have been able to do more. I shook my head. No, Jack, I said gently. You couldn't have done any more than you did. You're just one human. What you did do was get them home. After that, you're not responsible for their health or happiness. You were and are grieving too, Jack. Only 14 of us made it back, Marcia, he said. I couldn't bring them all home. No, you couldn't. But you got out who you could. He started to say more, but he looked down and saw the tea pooled on the floor. Oh, shit, Marcia, the tea. He got up, grabbed a towel, and started to clean up mug and liquid on the floor, and the bunk. I let him do what he needed to do. He turned to the bunk. Shit, I got it all over. Do you mind? I shook my head and stood up, moving aside so that he could strip his bed. He put the empty mug in the recycler, then picked up the dirty laundry, palmed open the door, and went to the laundry room. I followed behind and watched him put the linens in the laundry chute, then grab fresh ones. We came back to his room, and he made his bed. I quietly closed the door and watched him work and waited. When he had the bed made perfectly, he then put the new pillowcase on the pillow and arranged it just so. When it was done, he stopped, staring at the bed, suddenly at a loss. It started with a small whimper, then became a single sob. I moved quietly but quickly and caught him as he started to weep. I helped him gently to the bed and just held him until he fell back to sleep. I managed to lay him down and pull the covers over him. He'll be all right, granddaughter, you'll see, said Papa Legba. I know, Papa. He has me. Chapter 8. Jenny. I yawned my way to the mess hall, picking up a tray as I came in. I headed straight for the coffee first, then to the chow line. I filled my plate, then looked around for somewhere to sit. Mark and Chris were sitting together at the far end of the hall. When they spotted me, Chris waved me over. Morning, they said. Hey, I replied. I put my tray down and took a good long swig of coffee. It wasn't as good as Dirtside coffee, but it had the requisite caffeine, and that was good enough for me. Besides, I put enough sugar and cream in it to make it taste like coffee ice cream anyway. Mark was looking unusually thoughtful. He nodded when I sat down, but was working on his own breakfast and coffee. I suppose we're all still waking up, I thought. My wristcom went off. Another message from the PO? I rolled my eyes. It was yet another request to do a special project, but since he wasn't in the chain of command, I kept referring him to the XO. I sighed. What's up, Jenny? Asked Mark. The PO wants me to do some sort of project for him. I keep telling him to ask the XO to allow the time, but he doesn't bother. He's just persistent, I replied. Chris grimaced. I've met the guy, and he's a slimy git. You're doing the right thing, they said. I haven't met him yet. Sounds like I don't want to, said Mark. I haven't met this guy either, I said. Strange that we haven't, considering the station isn't that big. I think he tends to stick to his offices, Chris said. Not that I'm sad about that. They looked at their wristcom. Shit, I gotta go. See you two after shift. Mark and I waved as they left. Mark moved over so he could sit in front of me. He'd gotten much easier to deal with since Kirby chewed him out. I even thought of him as a friend now. Made me wonder how much of his personality before was an act. We're not all that different, I thought. Wonder why, though. It can't all be male macho bullshit. I looked at him. He met my eyes and blushed. I felt my own cheeks grow hot, and something about his blue eyes made the back of my neck tingle. Mark cleared his throat. Listen, I was wondering, they're playing a movie on Friday in the chapel. Would you like to go with me? I smiled. Are you asking me out? He put his hand through his hair. Well, yeah. Really? Yeah, I mean, I've liked you for a while now, especially after you chewed me out about Kirby. You were right, I was being a shit, and I respect that you told me off. Made me think there was a lot more to you that would be interesting to know. I raised my eyebrows. That was a first. I took a deep breath and wondered what to do. I did like him, now that he wasn't being an idiot most of the time. I frowned. His face fell. If you don't want to, that's okay. Oh, no, it's not that. I want to go, but... He perked up. What? Well, I wasn't always a woman. I waited for him to react. Oh. He sat back, but didn't say anything. If that's a problem for you, then we're done here, I said, and started to stand and take away my tray. No, wait, he said. Please? That doesn't matter to me. I'm just surprised you told me up front. Are you sure it's not a problem? Why would it be? I put down my tray and sat back down. You'd be surprised. Even with all the unity laws, there's still assholes who make a big deal about trans people. Depends on where they come from, though. Memories of some people I'd met at the academy surfaced, but I shoved them away. I looked at him and really searched his face. He almost looked like a lost puppy waiting for someone to tell him he was a good boy. I smiled. But I'm glad you're okay with it, so yes, I'll go with you Friday. His eyes lit up like a pair of lamps. Really? You will? I nodded and chuckled a little. Yes, Mark, I really will. He smiled widely. Awesome. Do you want to do dinner first? I mean, I know we have dinner together anyway, but... I'll meet you here for dinner, then we'll go to the movie, I said, making the decision since Mark seemed a bit stunned. God, he really is adorable, I thought. Excuse me, Ensign Fraser, came a high nasal voice from beside me. I instinctively moved my chair away from it. I looked up to see a tall blond man with wide shoulders in a civilian suit. Yes, I replied, immediately wary of this man. I gave a quick glance over at Mark, who looked like someone had hit him on the head with a board. His eyes were wide, and he was staring at the man as if he'd seen a ghost. I am Political Officer Morgan. You have been ignoring my emails, Ensign. I stood up so I could look him in the eye. Sometimes my height had its advantages. Sir, I've already told you need to clear any projects with the XO. Until I have permission from her, I can't do any work other than that which I'm assigned. I have permission from the captain, Ensign, and from the Unity government. I will need you to start soon, so if you'd come with me... My whole body was screaming that I shouldn't go anywhere with this man, but because he ordered me in public, I had no real choice. I'll need to put away my tray, I started to say. I'm sure your friend here can take care of your tray for you. Isn't that right? He said, looking straight at Mark. Mark looked almost terrified, but nodded. Excellent, Ensign. He motioned towards the mess hall door. I sighed and left the mess, wondering why Mark looked so terrified of this man. 20 minutes later, I stared at Morgan after he explained what he wanted. You want me to do what? I said, looking disbelievingly at the orders on the tablet. I can't believe that the captain would approve this. He has, and you will do this. I'm not a computer expert. Morgan laughed. Not a computer expert, really? He gestured to his aide, who handed me another tablet. I thumbed through the files, my eyes wide. How did you get these files? I thought I'd scrubbed them. Morgan leaned back in his chair. I have friends in high places, Ensign. Now, if you still insist on refusing to do this, then I'll send those files to Fleet Security. I'm sure that your father would be interested in knowing where you are. Breakfast suddenly felt like a lead in my stomach as the blood drained from my face. That was the last thing I wanted to happen. It took all I had to get away from that asshole, and I wasn't going back. I took a few deep breaths to keep my hands from shaking. It really made me wish I could just bash his head in, but that wouldn't do any good either. If it was anything like me, he'd have some way of getting the information out if he died of anything other than natural causes. Fine, I said. When do you want me to start? After boots on the ground day. You're to talk to no one about this, not even the XO or captain, unless they bring it up. This is classified top secret and compartmentalized. Do you understand? But I don't have clearance. You've been granted it on a temporary basis, Ensign. All the necessary access codes are on the tablet. I'm sure you can work on the code between your shifts, as you are an extremely skilled programmer. Why me? The person who pulled my records has to be better than I am, obviously, I said. Because they're elsewhere and you're here. You will get that finished and working for Boots and then maintain it. That's all you really need to know. Dismissed. He turned to his console and began to ignore me, as if my presence never existed. I started to take the tablet with the orders and the tablet with my information on it, but his aide caught my arm. I don't think so, the aide said. I handed him the tablets. He gave me back the one with my orders and pocketed the other. I frowned and walked out. When I got to ops for my shift, Murray was sitting at comms instead of Kirby. I had managed to calm myself during the walk from Morgan's office, and I was able to at least approximate my Happy Jenny persona. Hey, Murray, where's Lieutenant Kirby? Murray turned towards me, but it was Commander Foster who answered. He's on bereavement leave, Fraser, and you're late. Oh no, is he okay? Reverend Brooks is with him, Foster said. Now, would you mind telling me why you're late? The political officer wanted to talk to me, sir, and waylaid me at breakfast. I would have thought Mark would have told him, but then I remembered that Mark had the day off. I sighed. All right, Ensign. You've never been late before, so I'll let this one go. What did he want with you, anyway? He, wanted to ask me questions about pre-call, sir. I'm not sure why he wanted to talk to me and not the captain, but I shrugged and hoped to all the gods that there were that I sounded convincing. Don't worry about it, Fraser. Political wankers like him like to talk to the little people to see if the officers are lying to him about what's going on with the mission. Most of these political officers aim to end up being colony governors, you see, so they get obsessed about the mission going smoothly. Yes, sir. He was just like that. How do you deal with them? I said. Fortunately, you're far enough down the ranks that you really can't refuse. Me, I avoid him like the plague unless the captain orders me to interact with him. The XO came in to start the day watch, and Foster greeted her. Well, Kate, looks like Fraser here got accosted by the political officer this morning. The XO gave me a sympathetic look. Ugh, sorry, Fraser. Not the best start to your morning, is it? I shook my head. I'm off to the mess, Foster said. See you later. The commander left the bridge. Don't worry about it, Fraser. Hopefully that'll be the first and last time you'll have to deal with him. I hope so, sir. I walked over to the comm station to relieve Murray. He gave me a sympathetic smile, patted me on the arm, and then left himself. I sighed as I began to sift through the night's incoming comms traffic. The tablet from Morgan shifted in my pocket. Fucking hell, what do I do? I thought. You do the job and don't ask questions, said my father's voice. Fuck. Even the prospective date with Mark couldn't make me feel any better. I sighed again and threw myself into my work, while the rest of my mind worked on the code I'd need to do what Morgan asked. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.